Welcome back to the Junk Room, everybody. That's right, Junkman's still in Vegas, but we're looking at classic Junkman videos all this week, and we're going to go back to me talking about my 10 favorite cartoons growing up in the 80s. A lot of people ask me, Junkman, what cartoons did you watch in the 80s besides the Chipmunks? We know you like the Chipmunks. You talk about the Chipmunks all the time. What else did you love when it comes to cartoons? And to me, I know people is going to talk about cartoons, the Daffy Duck era, the Looney Tunes era and all that, but to me, you don't get any better than classic Saturday morning cartoons of the 80s. When you talk 80s cartoons, or when you talk Saturday morning cartoons, the 80s is the golden child. I mean, everything's good and back then. Maybe not everything, because we're going to look at 5 that suck, or 5 that I thought sucked. So let's go back to around 2019, where I looked at the 10 best kid cartoons that I loved growing up, and 5 that I really hated. Let's go. Now, we got all that plug-in mess out of the way. What is next? What are we going to talk about? Well, I'm going to give you 10. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 10 80s cartoons that I loved. Now, I'm not sure this is really in some kind of best of order, although I think down the list I do like them more, but it was hard to really put these in order. And some of them I just want to talk about because I forgot about and I hadn't seen since I was little. So let's talk about them. Before we get started, let's talk about Saturday morning cartoons. I don't know about you, but I love Saturday morning cartoons. Now, I hated waking up early on Saturday, but if my mom started vacuuming, cleaning up, or yelling at me to get out of bed, I would get up and turn on Saturday morning cartoons. No, in my room, I didn't have a fancy HD TV and all that. I had a little black and white one that I had to change the channel with pliers because I broke the knob off. And if you didn't have the antenna just right, you wasn't watching jack. It was fuzzy, it was black and white, but hey, I loved watching them. And sometime my parents would leave to go yard sale shopping or whatever people did back in the 80s when they used to go outside. And I would get to watch cartoons in color. And not just in color, sometimes, if lucky, in living stereo. I know, shocking as it is. But man, Saturday morning, I can't really say, if you didn't grow up on the 80s Saturdays cartoons era, I know there was cartoons in the 90s and you had your Cartoon Network and all that, you don't really understand. I mean, the adults, or I guess the teenagers and everybody else had their prime time network television shows. We had morning prime time kid shows, cartoons. And it was a big event. I remember like 7:30 in the afternoon, they would do a special fall preview of the upcoming cartoons. They would get someone like somebody from Facts of Life to host the cartoons coming up for the new season. And you would sit there at 7:30 like on a Monday night, look at all these cartoons coming out. They're making a cartoon of that. Again, no internet, so we didn't know what was coming out. We didn't read the trades back then. We were like 10 years old. So we just had to wing it. I also remember my grandma would always buy TV Guide. Young kids probably don't even know what that is. But they would do a fall preview where they would list all the shows coming up on the network that season. And man, I love it when I came across the cartoon ones. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm babbling like I always do. Let's talk about 10 of the best cartoons on Saturday morning. Now again, I'm going to stick to Saturday mornings. And one of my favorite cartoons of the 80s was He-Man, Masters of the Universe. But I don't count that as a Saturday cartoon because it used to come on at like 3 o'clock every day during the week. So technically it wasn't a Saturday morning cartoon. I'm looking at the Saturday morning network cartoons. Let's start this list with something I love that wasn't just cartoons, but it became a cartoon series. Pac-Man. Oh, I love Pac-Man. When I first heard about this, I remember where I was. I was at my friend Nikki's house down the road from me, probably way down the end of the road. I was going to say he's right next door, but he was probably about 10 houses down. We camped out in his backyard, little small backyard, had a tent, had a radio. For some reason, we heard him talking about it on the radio, like something, hey, this Saturday, come watch the Pac-Man cartoon series. And not was it just Pac-Man, it was Miss Pac-Man and Baby Pac-Man. And it blew your mind. How can they turn Pac-Man, this little game about a little yellow ball that goes around eating dots, into a cartoon series? But they did it. Not sure how they did it. Now, I loved it. Now, I haven't seen it since I was probably 10 or 11 or whenever it came out, 82, 83, somewhere around then. So I can't promise you that it's still good. So if you go search it on YouTube and you watch it, you say, hey, Junkman, that cartoon's a piece of shit. Well, I'm sorry. When you're 10 years old and you only got 3 channels to watch, it wasn't. And I have to say what a great, big fan of Pac-Man I was. Now, granted, I wasn't that good at Pac-Man. Pac-Man got very boring. After you played it for a few minutes, it was the same board over and over, the same maze over and over again. And it just wasn't as fun to me. I know everyone had PacMan Fever, but I had Miss PacMan Fever. I was the bomb in this Pac-Man. I had a guy that lived next door to us, and he put video games in his basement. He put them in stores, but he would swap them out. So he'd always have probably 6 to 8 video games and probably 6 to 8 pinball machines in his basement, and then swap them out to another, like Aladdin's Castle. So we keep them rotated, and it was what a great way to grow up in the arcade era with a guy that had arcade games. He was kind of weird, I will grant you that, but every once in a while he'll let us come down in his basement and play video games. And he had Miss Pac-Man, and boy did I spend hours and days playing Miss Pac-Man. No, I didn't see a Miss Pac-Man kill screen. I don't know if I was that good, but I was the best one in our little neighborhood, that's for sure. And when you're in the 80s, our little neighborhood, that to us was the whole world. I was the Miss Pac-Man champion. In fact, I had a bowling alley a couple miles away. I'd walk down to it to play Pac-Man and try to get someone to play against me, and I would win. But then we would get into a debate what wins, high score, or who gets the furthest in the mazes. But anyway, we're here to talk Pac-Man cartoon, not about the arcade game, which I could spend hours talking about. This cartoon had Baby Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, and Pac-Man, and all the ghosts. Blinky, Nicky, Dot, or whatever the names are, I don't really remember, but I do think one was Pinky. And I don't remember much about it, but I know sometimes Pac-Man would get hit by a ghost, and he'd get all kind of like drunk and dizzy and stuff, and then he would find an energy pellet and be back to normal. But I don't remember if he ever ate any ghosts. Let me know in the comments below. Did he eat ghosts in that? Okay, let's get on to number 9. And maybe this one's I'm a little older, but if I love Pac-Man in the early 80s, and around 86, this is who I was really in love with, Ed Grimley. Who? What? Martin Short is Ed Grimley. First started out on SCTV, but then I knew him best from Saturday Night Live. And I love Martin Short. I mean, he has such great Saturday Night Live characters. He had Ed Grimley, which we're talking about here, which I loved. You don't understand how much of an Ed Grimley fan I was. And then he had the lawyer, Nathan Thurm, that, he would always smoke and have ashes all hanging off his cigarettes. And he's like, is it me? It's him, right? It's not me. It's him. Love that. Martin Short was the best thing for a kid my age on Saturday Night Live. And here's the shocking thing about Martin Short. I didn't realize this till a few years ago. Martin Short was only on Saturday Night Live one season. But with that one season, he had some groundbreaking characters that became really household names, like Ed Grimley, that they turned into a cartoon. And during this cartoon, they had a live action Dracula that would come out and do his little talk about the show or something. I don't remember, but it was played by Joe Faraday, another guy from SCTV that I love. Many of you probably know him as the dad from Freaks and Geeks. I love this guy. He's really funny. And for a long time, I thought he was in Last Crusade, but that's not him. But the Ed Grimley cartoon, I haven't watched this one in years either. Not sure if it held up, but man, I loved Ed Grimley. So when I found out he was doing a cartoon, it just blew my mind, and I loved the cartoon series. So let's go on to number 8. And growing up in the 70s, I loved Gilligan's Island. I mean, Gilligan was the funniest thing on TV. You're sure my dad would tell you Don Knotts was the funniest sidekick on TV? Not to me. It had to be John Denver. Wait, John Denver. John Denver's that singer. Bob Denver. Bob Denver had to be the fun. And when they're related, Bob Denver and John Denver, are they related? I really highly doubt that. So, what am I talking about? Gilligan's Island. I know what you're thinking. That Junkman, that's not Gilligan's Island. I mean, that's not a cartoon. Well, you're wrong. Because the Islanders got off the island, but then they got lost on their own planet. That's right, Gilligan's Planet was a cartoon series in the 80s, and it brought back the original cast to do the voice of Gilligan's Planet. Now, I know the professor, and I think the skipper and Gilligan. I think all the originals. I'm not sure about Ginger, because I know when they did Rescue from Gilligan's Island, they didn't bring Ginger back, the original. She didn't want to come back if she wanted some more money or something like that, so they replaced her. So, being Ginger's usually the holdout, not sure about the cartoon series. Does anybody remember that? Gilligans, when they got rescued from Gilligan's Island? Well, what about when the people on Gilligan's Island opened their own hotel? But Gilligan's Planet saw the castaways castaway on their own planet. And it was all thanks to the buffoonery of Gilligan. That damn Gilligan. You know, in real life, somebody would have killed him long before the second season. But I love Gilligan's Planet in the early 80s. And here's one I can't really say much about, because this is one that I had memories of in my head. And I couldn't think of the name of it for years. And I would ask everybody, what is this? And no one knew what I was talking about. Till probably about a year ago, I asked on Twitter about it. And somebody sent me a link to it. And I said, oh my God, I think this is the cartoon. So it had to be really early 80s, because my memory on it is really fuzzy. Let's see, I was probably 7, 8 around 19. I was probably 7 around 1980. So maybe this might have been late 70s also, because I have a very fuzzy memory of it. Anyway, I'm babbling again. What's it called? It's called Sport Billy. Not a very good name for a cartoon series. I mean, I would never look in the TV guide and say, 8 p.m., Black Channel 4, Sport Billy. I have to watch that one. I would never do that. I didn't like sports. Still don't get sports. But this was not really a sports cartoon series. And I know I talked about the network cartoons, but from what I remember, this was on the USA Network. Cartoon Express. Does anybody remember Cartoon Express? I had that on my list, and I thought about it. Well, that's not a cartoon. That's just a block. They would show probably 2 hours of cartoons, put them all together. They would show about 2 hours of cartoons and call it the USA Cartoon Express. It would show a little train come out, and it would take you into the cartoon land. What I remember about Sport Billy is that he was from another planet that was very Earth-like, and I think it was called Olympia or something like that. He hung out with a girl named Lily, and they had a little dog also. What was that dog's name? What was that dog's name? Little white dog, I think. Wally. Yeah, Lily, Wally, and Sport Bill. They were time travelers, and they always had some kind of sport event where they had to go back in time to help save humanity. Anyway, what's next? Well, this was also, I think, part of the USA Express block party. I think this was also part of USA Express. Could be wrong, but a lot of times they would take shows that were on network television and run its course, and then throw it on the USA Network as reruns. So maybe it premieres somewhere else. And this was the Laugh Olympics. Anyone remember this? Now again, I said I went into sports, and here I am, Sports Billy, and now I'm watching Laugh Olympics. And whenever I asked people what this was about the little boy, they would all tell me, you're talking Laugh Olympics. No, I'm not talking Laugh Olympics. Laugh Olympics, when you took, I think they were all Hanna-Barbera characters, where you took each team. I remember they had the fake ScoobyDoo that was like a blue guy that hung out with a fake Superman. What was that guy's name? I don't remember. Sorry, I should have looked that up. But you would have the good team, and then you would have kind of the crazy wacky team, and then the evil villain team. Usually it was the good guys that always won. I can't remember if one time the bad guys won. I remember there was a little dog, and he would always laugh when somebody got hurt and go. And I remember this really big giant ape. I think his name was Grape Ape. I remember I had a Viewmaster of this also, and I put it in, I put the Viewmaster in and watch Grape Ape. I'm pretty sure his name was Grape Ape. He was kind of like a big grape. He was like a big ape or something that wore a baseball cap. Not sure why. Maybe that's why I wear baseball caps today from watching this show. And then there was the guys that was like another fake Scooby-Doo that like had a doom buggy. I don't know what that was, but I hated it. I hated that. And speaking of stuff I hate, before we get into 5 more that I love, let's talk about 5 cartoons real quick that I hated in the 80s. Number 5, I think it's late 80s. Never seen it, don't like it, don't want to see it, won't ever watch it. I don't care. You can leave in the comments how funny it is. Not going to watch it. Just not going to do it. I don't care. And that's called DuckTales. I don't care. I hate it. Do you ever just hate something even though you've never seen it, never want to see it? I hate it. The pure sight of DuckTales enrages me. I hate DuckTales almost as I hate that Scrooge McDuck. I don't want to see a cartoon about talking ducks. I'd much rather see a cartoon series about a talking Rubik's Cube or a talking Pac-Man. Don't get me started on DuckTales. Yuck. Number 4, Flintstones Kids. Oh, now this is where they took Wilma and Fred and Barney and what was Barney's wife's name? Betty. And turned them into kids. Some reason, I don't know. I know they got married and they lived next to each other, but I didn't know they were friends when they were toddlers also. And I hate whenever they take a cartoon series and make them into stupid little babies. Hate that. But the worst Even worse than that is when they took Bam Bam and Pebbles and made them teenagers solving mysteries. Trying to copy Scooby-Doo. But it was about the Flintstones. But it was about, the baby Pebbles and Bam Bam. And I think Dino was there. He was kind of the Scooby-Doo of the show. And they went around solving crime. Yeah, I think that's been done before. I hated this cartoon. If I remember right, it only lasted about one season, but it was horrible. And just think, if I didn't like this at like 10 or 11, it must be really bad today. And speaking of a Scooby-Doo, let's talk about number 2 cartoon I hate, ScoobyDoo and ScrappyDoo. This was like a spin-off to Scooby-Doo where they just redid Scooby-Doo, but they brought in ScrappyDoo. Now, I'll be honest with you, I hate Scooby-Doo. I hate that damn 70s cartoon Scooby-Doo with that with that pothead guy. What's his name? Scooby. Oh, God, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank. You got the guy that wears the scarf around his neck all the time. You got Betty and Veronica in there. Now, I remember them. No, that's Archie's, ain't it? Betty and Veronica. Velma, I think one of them's named Velma. Fred's the guy that wears the scarf. Scooby-Doo. Shaggy. Oh, hate that pothead. Hate that pothead. But most of all, I hate Scooby-Doo. So when they redid Scooby-Doo and brought in a puppy named ScrappyDoo, I really hated that. Oh. You just don't understand my hatred for Scooby-Doo. It's the same episode over and over and again. They got away with it. Wasn't for you meddling kids. I know. The bad guy's gonna be some creepy guy we saw at the beginning of the show. We get it. It was okay when they had celebrities on it sometime, but I hated the 70s Scooby-Doo, but I really hated the spin-off Scooby-Doo and ScrappyDoo. Even hate saying ScrappyDoo. What's number 1? Oh. I seen one episode of this because they did a Star Wars parody, but I didn't even like it. And this is another one that I never saw, never gonna watch. You can tell me it's funny, I don't care. By the look of it alone, I will not watch it, and I hate it, and it gets my blood boiling just having to talk about it. And that's Muppet Babies. Again, I hate when they turn anything into babies. I would hate it if they did a C-3PO and R2 as babies cartoon. I hate when they turn cartoons into baby cartoons. And I think they wore diapers, and that disgusted me as a teenager. And that ugly little baby pig. Oh, okay, next. Let's get back to what I like before I get mad. Number 5 is one you all know, and that's the Smurfs. I was crazy about the Smurfs. Now, early Smurfs. I remember I grew up on Smurfs, and I really liked Smurfs. And then probably I got out of cartoons and everything, and then probably the late 80s. I was having that, hey, let's watch Smurfs. I used to love this as a kid. Turned it on, it was all kind of different Smurfs I'd never seen before. There was actually a Smurf that was older than Grandpa Smurf. I don't know what happened between the seasons I used to watch it and then the seasons in the late 80s. They even had a girl, and the whole purpose of the first couple seasons was, Smurfette. She was the only girl. And all the Smurfs wanted to get at her because she was the only one. And I think in the later ones, Gargamel, the bad guy that hung out with his cat, had a son or something that he hung out with. So we're talking the early Smurfs. I don't like when they screw around with the canon of Smurfs. Smurfs is a group of little small villagers here, and you got the big bad guy that hates them that hangs out with his cat. Why he hates the Smurfs, I never really knew. Did they get into his garden or something? Why did that Gargamel hate the Smurfs so much? And just once, it would have been nice to see him eat one. Number 4, Alvin and the Chipmunks. I had a love and hate for this one here. I loved Alvin, Simon, and Theodore. I grew up on the Chipmunks. One of the first albums I ever had was Alvin and the Chipmunks. I always loved the Chipmunks. So when they did a cartoon series, I loved it. But I tell you what I hate was those Chipettes. I don't know why they had to be part of the Chipmunks cartoon. I know you're saying, hey, Junkman, you're sexist. You just don't like them because they're female chipmunks. No, I think they were just a rip-off of the Chipmunks. If it was a cartoon series about girl squirrels, I might would have given it more of a chance, but I hated the Chipettes. But we're talking about things I like, and I love the Chipmunks. Number 3, and I think this is one you all are going to agree, that's a really good Saturday morning cartoon, and it bridged to that part between the little kid cartoons like PacMan and led into the more, I don't want to say adult cartoons, but more mature teen cartoons, and that's Dungeons and Dragons, the cartoon. Now, I never played Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, I think me and a friend got a book one time on how to play it. We couldn't even figure it out. So I never got into Dungeons and Dragons. But the cartoon series I loved. It was about a group of kids. They go through, I think they're riding a roller coaster at the fair or something, and they get sent back into time. Do they transform into another planet? Not really sure, but they ended up in Dungeons and Dragons land. And they never got home. We never had a final episode. So, come on, Netflix. Give us that last episode of Dungeons and Dragons. All of us adults who grew up in the 80s really want to see those kids get home. Bring home Dungeons and Dragons kids. I mean, if they can make a rescue from Gilligans Island, they can have the kids from Dungeons and Dragons get rescued. Although, come think about it, the rescue from Gilligan's Island ended with them back on the island again. Damn Gilligan. Dungeons and Dragons, really great cartoon. And number 2, who doesn't like a cartoon series about karate? Who doesn't like a cartoon series about a talking dog? Put them together and you got Hong Kong Phooey. Ooh, I love Hong Kong Phooey. I love this cartoon and I love the theme song. Hong Kong Phooey was a buffoon. He couldn't do anything right, but he thought he was a superhero. Yes, during the day he was a mild-mannered janitor, but he would come Hong Kong Phooey and kill people with karate chops. But most of the time it was just this little sidekick guy that solved the mysteries, and Hong Kong Phooey would take all the credit.
Hong Kong Phooey, quicker than a human eye. Oh, he's got style, a groovy smile, a body just won't stop. When the going gets rough, he's super tough with a Hong Kong Phooey chop. Hong Kong Phooey, #1 super guy.
Now, number 1. This one here is a little more late 80s. And it really shouldn't be number 1, but I put it at number 1. It's not my favorite cartoon, but I did like it as more of a teenager. And that's Bill and Ted cartoon. Yes, they made a Bill and Ted cartoon series. Sure, it was missing a lot of the humor and fun of the movie series, but I was a big fan of at least the first Bill and Ted movie. And I had the action figures from Kenner, and I loved the cartoon series. I think it only lasted 1 season, maybe 2. But each episode would have Bill and Ted going back in time to deal with some rural ugly dudes. Really liked this cartoon. But that's a look at 10 cartoons that I loved in the 80s. Again, it's not really a list of the best 10, just 10 I could think of really quickly that I loved. What about you? What did you watch back in the 80s on TV? Were you alive in the 80s? Am I wrong? Was the 90s a great time for Saturday morning cartoons? If it was, let me know. Maybe I missed out on some great stuff. But when I Google search 90s cartoons, I see a bunch of cartoons that don't even look good. Hey Arnold. Sorry, it just doesn't look that good to me. And don't even get me started on Darkwing Duck. So you know if I hate DuckTales, I'm gonna hate a superhero dressed like a duck. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there were some good 90s cartoons also. Anyway, in the comments below, let me know what you watched and liked and hated on Saturday morning cartoons. And until we talk again, have a good day.
Junkman channel popping though.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.